Hello guys, good morning. Thanks a lot for joining us today on this Saturday morning. So, uh, so, let's get started with the session. So, yeah, so Anurag is here. Anurag, can you turn on the? Okay, great. So, thanks a lot,
Hi,
Anurag, for
thanks.
joining us and for the interesting topic that we have. So I would just like to start this session with a bit of intro of the Antwork platform. So Antwork is a social learning platform. We are in the core, we are working with the working professionals, the experienced people like Anurag to deliver the education to the folks who want to transition into some niche career and the folks who are learning and starting to kickstart their career into particular technologies. So into that, we have a lot of offerings from our side in the data engineering space, in the machine learning, and we are doing, and also in the cybersecurity digital marketing. So it's a whole lot of offerings from our side. The session today is primarily focused on use of Azure data services in gaming and casino industry. So Anurag will be presenting and telling you about what is actually the data services are provided by Azure and so on, and how you can actually build a solution. So we will also have a demo where he will be showing you how he built the solution for that particular domain. So just to get started, let me just try to give you a bit of introduction to the Anurag. So Anurag, can you move the slide?
Yes. Now I'll.
So Anurag is currently working in Kimberly Clark. He have over 12 years of experience in the IT domain and have worked and built end-to-end architecture solutions for various AI and machine learning solutions. Before Kimberly Clark, he was working in Diageo, where you sort of worked all the hardware of their supply chain, manufacturing, and all those things using the cloud platform and machine learning and AI into that. He have really good experience on the Azure part of the data services, be it Data Factory, be it Data Flow, Databricks, etc. And have the hands-on experience of building data warehouses, etc. Also, apart from all these, he also works on a lot of educational part to try to give back to the community and the society. And into that, he have a Medium blog. He do a lot of engagements like this, and try to share whatever he have learned so far. So without the further ado, I will just start the session and over to you, Anwar.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Hi guys, and thanks for taking out time on a Saturday early morning. I understand it's a weekend, and y'all. I understand it's a weekend, and it would be difficult for most of y'all to take out time. But yes, I would like to thank you for taking out time, and I hope this would be an interesting session for you, wherein you might learn some things, get a fair understanding of how data engineers work, what value they bring to the organization, and what the future holds for the data engineering. I would say the data engineering career prospects for in future for the aspiring candidates. So I would take the opportunity to share one of the interesting case studies which I have worked for one of our clients. And here, so you see a lot of use cases in, say, computer in consumer packaging, in FMCG segments. uh, i- you see a lot of use cases of AI in, say, education, FMCG, CPG domains, e-commerce. But uh, uh, this is one of the interesting case studies which I had worked for the client, wherein before working on this, I never knew that okay, people can use AI or data analytics in the gaming industry as well. And here, the gaming industry, here I mean the exact shop floors, like the casinos and the slot machines, which are not that, I would not say they are famous, they are illegal in India. But yes, there are a lot of places wherein you can actually go to a casino, you can play your games. There are slot machines wherein you would play and bet your money on that. So yeah, that was an interesting case study wherein before applying this, I never knew we could use AI to such extent within the shop floors of the casinos or the gaming venues, which are famous in, say, US, Australia, Las Vegas. It's the Sin City wherein a lot of gaming machines, slot machines are there, open casinos are there. So yes, so what are the agenda would be, I would like to cover on what are the data problems in the casino and the gaming industry. What is the dilemma of choice for a data engineer? Like, how do we go about implementing solutions when people come to us with a business case? Uh, we made a choice. We have a lot of cloud providers in the market now. So we have AWS, Google Cloud, we have Azure as well, Oracle, Alibaba, lot of players have entered the market. So just that, how we went about uh, selecting Azure for our use case. I would briefly talk about the data services which are present in Azure, and then how did we implement it. I would just uh, show you a brief demo of what we did for a data ingestion framework, or what did we do for say building the scenario modeling and things like that. So let's start with the session today. Yes, so nowadays what happens is the traditional gaming industry is still on the shop floors, wherein we have buildings where you can go, a casino is in place, you have slot machines in place. But the challenge with this industry is that a lot of a lot of gaming options have even come online, and they are more of a community driven approach, wherein say uh, you can play the same slot game on your mobile application as well. People have started using playing Ludo to such a great extent during this pandemic season, wherein they have moved from the conventional board board play games to the online gamings. So there has been a lot of investment which has gone into building a very big casino, or a, a gaming a gaming building wherein you can go, you can have lot of gaming machines in place, and you can just start playing with that. So the problem is that the shop floors are also facing a lot of resistance in terms of people coming directly and playing. And the more of a shift is towards say online gaming. It's the common problem which our retail segment as well faced. People moved from going and purchasing something in a supermarket to say making online purchases. But still, see, Amazon as a retailer or a e-commerce exists, but at the same time you have a Walmart as well, which is existence. So Walmart might be doing something good, so that even in the with the advent of the e-commerce and people adopting to e-commerce, still Walmart is stable and it's making steady profit. So how do they do that? There would be a lot of, say, strategy and data analytics going into it, so that you need to attract the millennials from, say, online and their mobile phones to the physical stores. So it was it was the same challenge with some of the shop floors gaming industry, which is facing the same. So people have a plethora of options for playing different type of games on their mobiles, wherein maybe they might not even have to bet a physical money and things like that. So this is one of the challenges, keeping the millennials or attracting customers to the shop floors rather than them playing on a mobile or a e-commerce on a mobile or a web application. The other challenge which most of this shop floor gaming industry faces, there could be, when gaming and betting is involved, there could be a chance of anti-money laundering as well. So we have to make sure that if we are a government licensed institution for casino or for slot machines, we need to make sure that there is no anti-money laundering involved as well. This is a very big use case for the industry. Then there could be a chance wherein you see, you just have a kind of wherein, if say you are a regular customer in the same casino, you could what you could do is you can have a relationship with one of the staffs wherein he could do some settings and maybe you could be a winner in most of the games. So we also have to keep a check that there's no cheating involved, be it with there's a cheating involved with the there could be a cheating with a customer does, there could be a cheating where a lot of staff members would be involved. So people have to keep an eye on that as well. And these two things, say anti money laundering and anti cheating, are very important, wherein you need to try to predictively do it rather than doing it on the hindsight, wherein things have happened and then you are showcasing it. Because for such kind of use cases of money laundering or anti cheating, the more aware we are that there is a probable chance of, say, anti money laundering in this particular game, or there is a more chance of an anti cheating when a particular shop floor guy is more friendly with one of the gamers. So the more predictably we define it, the better chances that we would be able to retain the license of the institution. Because if in the if somebody if the government comes to know that such kind of things is happening within the industry, then obviously there would be a chance wherein the license will be revoked. So we need to keep a prior check on these two factors, like anti money laundering, anti cheating. And uh, apart from all these things, a very important thing which we need to take care is that, uh, say in the US or in the Western countries, lot or in the European countries, lot of people are ensured with a social security after their retirement. So it's not that you need to plan your retirement as in India. Many places you, because you pay a lot of taxes during your complete tenure of your uh, your work tenure, you are entitled for some social security after you retire, which is an amount paid by the government to you. So the gaming industry or the casinos also need to make sure that people are not spending their social security amount in these casinos, because it is actually an amount which is given by the government to the people, and they should not be putting it in high risks of, say, betting, or because that would inculcate a bad, I would say, it would inculcate a bad impression on the complete social structure on which the society is built on. So that as well we need to take care. Now, so these are some of the problems which the casino or the soft floor gaming industry faces. Now we will, now that we have talked about the problems, let's talk about the use cases, how basically it's being applied across the gaming industries or the casino industry. So loyalty and marketing is one of the very important use cases. So what happens, imagine that e-commerce or the web application uh, playing has come recently, but imagine what kind of data these casinos would be storing per customer the moment they have started. So if they were started in, say, 1990s or 2000, early 2000s, imagine that what kind of an leap they have, rather than leap in terms of data. Say, people say, right, data is the new oil, and until you refine it, you don't get insights and all. So a casino industry, with the vast amount of specific data they have for the users who visit their store. Say in terms of survey, a lot of places nowadays, it's a common habit. You go to a hotel and they ask you to fill a survey. Did you like the food? Did you like the ambience and all? So these things had been there in the beginning as well in the Western countries. So these guys have been capturing the surveys of their staffs or their customers who frequent the store. So you now loyalty and marketing could be one of the use cases wherein it is very important for us to restrain the customer churn that is happening because of the shift in the digital platform, which people are, especially during the pandemic as well, people have shift. People who were not that digital savvy have to forcibly move to. So it's a shift in the complete thought of the society itself, wherein rather than meeting and gathering people, we have started socializing on websites and on our phones. So maintaining the customer churn is very important for these things, for these people, because imagine that the market standard says that you spend say 85% of your time or your money in getting a new customer, and you just spend 15% of your time or money in trying to retain the same customers. So getting new customers in this tight market uh, is very difficult. So risk management is in terms of say detecting anti-money laundering, anti-cheating cases within the shop floors. One of the very important use cases is operations. So what do you mean by an operation in a gaming industry? Operations here would be say there is a multi-floor there's a multi-floor casino. So there meet a multi-floor casino, or here in India as well, you will have that Smash and things like those gaming industry in Bangalore. If you would have been to a Smash or other particular kind of gaming clubs, you would sometimes the gaming clubs are multi-floors. So many times people would not even bother to go on the top floor and see that what do they have in store on the top, say the first floor or a second floor. So floor optimization is also a very critical use case within this industry, wherein you need to optimize the placement of the gaming machines within the floors. Imagine a very same example of how it happens in the retail industry. See, in most of the supermarkets, the very commonly used things are just at the tills where you make the payment. Say you have the chocolates, you have those cigarettes and those batteries which are just in front of you on the till. Because what happens is there could be a chance you would not be searching across, but the moment you come up to a till for a payment, you realize that okay, I have to take say two chocolates for my kid, or I need to take say a cigarette for myself or for my friend, and things like. So even though you didn't come there to shop for a cigarette or a chocolate for your chocolate, but what happens is because you see there while standing or waiting, you are tempted to buy that. So that's called the placement of products in a CPG, consumer packaging good industry. Similar case in the gaming industry as well. You need to place what is the probability that placing a slot machine on say the first floor would give you more returns than placing a slot machine on the ground floor. Similarly, if you have say 4 slot machines and floor card tables in your casino, how should you optimally place them within say the floor? So the moment a person enters, uh, there are a lot of people who don't like card games because it could be that involves a lot of say mind or calculations in that, but people like just betting on a slot machine because that's a kind of a pure luck. You enter your coins and something happens in the background and you get a hit a jackpot. So that kind of a use case also we need to understand based on people behavior. So out of say 4 card games, 2 slot machines, how should I optimally place it? Because at the end, why am I here? I am here to make money from my customers, right? In the right manner, without any risk involved, maintaining the loyalty of the customers, as well as not compromising on my return of investment. Because if I don't retain the customers, it would be that over the period of time my profits decline, and I would no longer be able to say pay my staff, pay the rent for the building which I have rented for the gaming machines. So a lot of background happens, right? And these are, I would say, this is a kind of an unorganized sector, wherein you have a lot of competition from the in terms of staff staff churn rate as well. See, uh, what happens is, if your staff is not very satisfied with your pay standards or your ambience or your culture, what happens is, for these small workflows, a very small perk, say you are getting paid $10 in one of the casinos, then just a payment of say $12 or $11.5 as well, many people would be willing to jump from one restaurant to another. Same like it happens for, in India, it happens for restaurants wherein it's very difficult to maintain the cooks or the chefs and the waiters, because they get a slight increase and they move on. So we also uh, need to uh, keep an eye, or I would not say an eye, keep a look into, say, the betterment of the people within our shop floor as well, that okay, I am catering to most of their needs, so that I don't face that kind of a churn within my own casino floor, that people don't, or my staffs just don't leave me for a mere increase in a small perk or something of that sort. Because loyalty as well, loyalty from the customers and loyalty from the staff as well, is very important for the gaming industry. And so, it's time for the first poll of the day. So Ram or Digvijay, you would like to take up the poll questions for the people here? So the poll is, which we would just like to gaze into the insight of the people who are attending this session, just to see like what kind of crowd we have. So see, this is what we are trying to do, is we are trying to gaze an insight into what kind of people usually come to such kind of master classes. And with this, we might try to improve the content of the classes as well. And it might also help, say, the experts who are delivering or delivering the sessions, how to improve on that. So yeah, this is how a survey, or this is a kind of a survey which we have put up, and with this we would get an insight into what kind of people have come to us. So by the time people are voting, see, what does the survey suggest? That a lot of people, maybe this masterclass might not be that effective for people who are already data engineers, because they might know the concept. But you see, oh, I now see a well mix of software. But we could make out that, see, people from other background as well, because clearly we see that others is completely leading in this poll. So it means that apart from the software development or the data engineer and data science data analyst who are bugged by this buzzword of data engineering, data science, lot of people from other industries as well are interested to see if they have a career choice of being a data engineer, or what is there in store for them to be a data engineer. So you see, this is one of the insights which we can gain from this live poll which is happening. So we need not go back to history or something. It's just apparent in front of us. You see that there are a lot of software. So the clear winner is people from other segments who want to understand what is data engineering, what scope it has, what's the future for data engineering. Maybe over the period of time, as and when we progress to the different slides, we would see that what Antwork might have in store for you if in case you want to pursue a career in data engineering. So this is how your survey helps. Say it, this survey will help Antwork. This survey will help me as well to deliver say good contents, or I might do a mistake during this presentation which you would help me correct during the different other presentations which we will have in future. So yes, we got an insight into our audience. We have a lot of people from software development. We have data engineering people as well. For them, it might be that it might not be a very new learning for the data engineer guys over here, but still, yeah, let's hold on and see from a different perspective how AI, ML, data science is applied in the gaming industry. Maybe you will get that insight if you are working in different domains. So yeah, we'll move to a different slide now. Yeah, so now the customer came to me. They told that, okay, we have to implement so and so use case for us. So what would be your suggestion for that, or how would you think we would be able to say cater to such kind of use cases? As a technologist, or say as a data engineer, what are your thoughts on that? What help you would need from us? So such kind of questions came during the brainstorming session when we did the requirement gathering. And then so a very common trend for most of the organizations is to move from, say, uh, we you might have heard this term, we want to be a data centric organization. So what is a data centric organization? Wherein each and every decision taken by the senior management, the CEO or the marketing manager, is defined by facts and figures. It is not that I have an intuition. I come today to my office being a CEO, and I think that, okay, let's do one thing. Let's increase or let's put a lot of, for an e-commerce, for a retail store, I'm saying, all of a sudden, being an area sales manager, I come one day in the morning to my office and I call all the supply chain people and say that, let's do one thing. I'm supplying 100, say 100 products to four different uh, but four different suppliers within my region. All of a sudden I come and say that, no, from today onwards I will take you out from my organization, and I would not be giving any products to you, and that extra 10 products I will distribute amongst the rest three distributors. So that I just cannot come and say to anybody like that if I'm not backed by facts and figures. So that is what a data driven organization is. But if I look into the history of that supplier and see that this supplier is not adhering to my standards, say I have told that, we have told as an organization that at least 10 products you have to display in the first shelf of your retail store, but this guy is not adhering to that. Moreover, what happens is he does not clean our products every day, and it is full of mud and it does not attract to the customer. So that's also one of the standards which we have put, which this guy is not adhering to, which I have come to see in my Power BI dashboard, or I have based on the data and facts over the, or moreover, or the other thing could be, this guy is not able to sell my products. Like every month I'm stocking him with 10 products, but he's not able to sell a single product. So this is what we see, but it is backed by facts now, that okay, if somebody asks higher management, why did you take out that supplier from your organization, I can very well say that he has not made any sale for last 2 to 3 months. I don't see a point giving our supplies to him. So this is, when I say this is backed by facts and figures and data. So nobody will come back to me and question me. So that is what a data driven organization means. And everywhere it's a buzzword after pandemic, I want to be a data driven organization, wherein every decision that happens for, say, marketing spends, within the marketing spends, how much do I spend in, say, TV ads, how much do I spend in mobile ads, how much do I spend in print media ad. So just an example, nowadays very few people read physical papers. So I would, over the period of time, being say CEO of one of the retail firms, I would say I don't want to give any advertisements on papers, because newspapers are not being read by people now, especially in the physical form. So I cut down my complete budget on printing media. I just say that rather than that 30 rupees which I am spending on printing media, I would spend on, say, uh, I would spend on extra on, say, my mobile ads or on my website ad. So such kind of decisions, this is a data driven organization. So the very first dilemma which the data engineer would have for such kind of use cases is what are the type of data you would be looking into. Because see, as a solution provider, I don't know what kind of data the organization might have. So the very first question should be that what kind of data you have, or what is the kind of data which you have historically, if at all. There would be a case where they would say that no, we want to start unfresh. Then in that case, the data engineer has to say that okay, you need to collect, these are the choices for you to do the collection. Now, why do we have a slide for say AWS, Azure, Google, IBM cloud over here? Because the, most of you might be aware, or if you are not aware, it's a basic term. Cloud, when we say that, cloud is an operational expenditure, it is not a capital expenditure. What is an operational expenditure? You only pay for how much you use. But in terms of capital expenditure, you imagine you are purchasing a house, you need say 50 lakhs to purchase a house. But if you are renting it, even a fresher can go and he can rent a PG and still get the same feeling of a house, because he has come to a new place, he would need something where he could stay. So it's the same thing. But the same fresher over say 5 or 10 years in his career, he would save the amount, and say after 10 years, 12 years, he would be in a position to purchase his own flat. But how that happened? It happened over the period of time. So uh, now, if for any startup or anybody who wants to invest in technology, the best thing is to go for an operational cost, wherein you could incorporate say Amazon Web Service, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud in your organization to collect and store the data, and then start some analysis on that data. But in our case, the customer was, I would say, tech savvy, or they had already had a tech stack where they were capturing some inputs in terms of say every time when the user used to come to the to the casino floor, they would ask them for a brief survey. What did you like about the casino? How was the placement and things like that? So these guys had already captured the survey for some last 5 to 10 years survey data they had. Then the other thing is very important aspect for any use case in data engineering is there a way to get data for say some of the competitors as well? So if you do a use case for retail or a consumer packaging good domain, there are a lot of third party data providers like Nielsen. You have Nielsen provides imagine that if you are working for Johnny Walker, in that case you can get an insights into what are the sales of say a Budweiser beer, which is Johnny Walker is a different organization, Budweiser is a different organization, but still they can look into the sales of both the organizations, because there are third party vendors who have the sales data for both the things. So Johnny Walker could purchase the sales data of say Budweiser to do some analysis. Similarly, Budweiser could purchase the data of Johnny Walker to do some analysis. So that is called the third party data, wherein you get data from the third party within yourself and try to compare your say the performance indicators with the other guys in the same domain, their performance indicators. What are they doing? What is that more people are attracted towards them? How is their pricing compared to us? Say if I'm selling a toothpaste for say 10 rupees, the other guy is selling it for 9.8 rupees and he's doing a lot of sales. So such kind of insights we could get from the third party data. There are a lot of ERP data as well, which is like uh, uh, SAP systems of organizations, SQL servers of organization, wherein before moving to the cloud, still people had data in their SQL servers, or say it could be transactional data, which happens on a day-to-day basis. Like what they being this customer, how much does he spend monthly on a casino bill? How much did he spend monthly on the food that we are offering in the casino? How much he's spending on the drinks which we are offering in the casino? So such kind of data many organizations would have already hold within their SQL server or their relational database, all the transactional database. So three questions answered. yes, we do have some data in our transactional databases. We do capture surveys or we do capture surveys or reports once a person comes. See, that is optional. Many guys will not bother to respond to a survey, but there would be people who would still bother to answer, and that, because from that part of the data we could do nothing. If nobody is willing to answer it, we cannot get an insight. But a lot of people would be willing to answer just in case to improve the experience and all, because that is how the people put in over there, that you give a survey report now, maybe we will improve your experience next time. So thinking that, we tend to answer that survey. So now with all, we got that this data, these guys have few amount of data, and maybe if some kind of data is not there, we would design a ingestion framework for these guys wherein they can start storing the data. Now comes the difficult part of what kind of solution do I choose? Choosing between, say, Amazon, Azure, Google, IBM, which kind of a cloud provider we would go. So this is basically a very large exercise, which uh, it, we need to think in terms of cost, the ownership cost across the maintenance cost, ownership cost, and at the very end it also comes to what kind of experience you have. Many time a person in Azure might not have a very good experience on AWS. Or imagine that if I want to build something within my organization, I do see that out of 10 people, there are 8 people or 5 people who know Azure, and 5 people do not know any of the clouds. So for me, it would always be a better option to, if there is a slight cost variation over the period of time, see, cost also comes, but that's a thing which we should not get into now, because that's a different topic altogether. So we need to do a total cost of ownership for uh, the organization based on the kind of data they have, the kind of, and also there could be a thing wherein you could be able, there is a drag and a drop utility, and there is something which I need to custom build in the sense I need to write code for ingesting the data and things like that. But and that will take, say, 10 days for that, and if I spend 10 days on one of my developers with, say, $10 per day, so I am spending $100. But if there is a, if there is one of the tools which is drag drop, and I can do it, I can make my business users learn, I can learn it very quickly within 2 days. So how much, and on the third day I'm able to build that complete ingestion pattern. What happens is 2 days on the learning I have spent $20, and the third day my pattern is ready without rough coding. I can do it drag and drop. I achieve the same functionality. So still I'm saving my 7 rupees or a $7 within that for 7 days, and that 7 days can be utilized. So such kind of dilemma comes for a data engineer, uh, which is common, and you have to go through this. And as and when you go through the curriculum or you enter into the field, you would be able to answer the question. So we had such kind of dilemmas, like which cloud to use, what would be the total ownership for the cloud, like how much money we would spend. Because see, this is a common big data architecture which I would like to show to everybody. See, the same kind of architecture wherein, say, you are ingesting data from IoT or from a from a streaming job. What is a streaming job for people who don't know? Just imagine that you have a health tracker which you wear on your hand, right? So every 1 second it is sending signal on your heartbeat, your pulse, and things like that. So you need to capture it rather than waiting for complete 1 day to capture it, because you cannot do that, right? People might have a heart attack at this very moment. So you need not wait for the complete day to end, wherein your I2 device has sent those data and you're capturing at the end of the day. That's not a possibility here. So those kind of data are called streaming data. So do you see, when you build a data platform, your data platform should be able to consume, say, batch streaming. So real-time data as well, they should be able to ingest, batch data as well. So you need to design solutions in that respect. So this is the big data common architecture. You see, the architecture remains the same, just that the components are different. On the very left hand side, this you see Azure Functions, Event Hub and all. These are the components for ingesting the data. Okay, then after you ingest the data, you push it in one of your data storage, which now in the early 90s or 70s until the early 2000 or 2010, until cloud was not that prevalent, storage was a very big thing. You see, when storage started, you would have seen that photos of IBM storage in 1940s, where 1 TB of, or I would, that time TB, terabytes was not a measure itself. Say 1 GB of storage would be almost as huge as a big building. But now you see, there are like 64 GB, 1 TB small chips you are getting, the memory cards which you can insert and use in your phone. So see that how cheap data has become. So data storage is never a concern for data analytics. And because of this shift in the cost of storage, what happens is people simply want to try to store all the data and make it usable only when they want. But if at the moment you don't store a data at this point of time, there could be something important which you are missing, because you don't know with this data how much effective it could be after, say, a 1 week or a 2 week. Because all of a sudden a new business unit comes in your organization and they ask, I want to do analysis on the survey results of food you have collected. Then you would like, oh, see, I have just collected survey results on, say, the ambience or the AC settings or the light settings, but I never bothered to do because I thought that it will require extra space. So with this cloud data storage, that's not the case, because storage is very cheap. It's just like close to $20 or something for 1 TB of data, or even lesser. It's like say $10 to $15 per terabyte of storage on a monthly basis, which is very less if you compare a very large enterprise. And 1 TB data is also huge amount. So that's why what people do is try to collect as much data as possible. Don't worry about the use case. Collect data now. Use case will come in future, and when they come, we would be ready that, oh, if somebody comes and asks that, do you have data for, now you are doing analysis only on, say, lighting and AC ambience, but later when I want to get insight into the food habits of people or drinks habit of people, that time you need not say that, oh, I will start ingesting data from today, and then after 1 month you can start doing the analysis, because that 1 month will become a gap between you and your competitor. So as far you can see that, okay, I would need this data, I would need that data, collect as much data as possible, because storage is not a concern, right? And only if you have more storage or better storage, you would be able to come up with more insights and more use cases for your organization. So a typical big data architecture wherein you ingest data from different sources using the ingestion pattern they have, store the data in a central repository. Once you store the data, you need to do some data transformations, which is a normal life cycle of data. Collect the data, store it within your cloud environment, transform the data, because uh, that saying I said in the beginning of the PPT, right? That a uh, da- good data is like crude oil. The more you refine the oil, the better version of the oil you get, right? From the same oil, you get a petroleum jelly, you get a petrol for your car. The most refined form is the petrol for the airlines. Similarly, the more data you refine and make it clear, better it becomes for your data science or your visualization needs. Because garbage in is a garbage out. Data is not clean, you would not get clear insights, right? So the data cleaning you do, which is data transformation, you have tools for that. So here specifically talking about these data services, we have another slide wherein I would give a brief description about the data services. So what did you do? Collected the data, transformed the data, then you used it for your machine learning and for your reporting purposes. So what is the right choice of technology? This was also a question. So finally what we did was, we thought, okay, because most of us were Azure experts, and moreover Azure total cost of ownership was less during this time. And the best part about Microsoft technologies is that many organizations will already have old tech stack of Microsoft. So imagine that many organizations would be storing data in Azure SQL, in SQL Server on premise, right? So it is like you already were a partner of Microsoft. You just extend the partnership with ongoing cloud adoption. So we thought that, okay, let's go for uh, Azure as our partner for this implementation on cloud. I would also show the total cost of ownership, how over the period of 3 years, how did we see the cost for this? In the coming slides, we will show you that as well. So we have a time for the second poll. Digvijay, or yeah. So yes, here see, with this we would like to gaze an insight into what is your level of understanding on Azure cloud or the cloud platform. So see, because during this course you would also be we would also be covering the basics of cloud on say Azure, AWS. You would get an insight of what components are there, how to use it, when to use it. So that's why we just want to gaze a knowledge into that. So it's good that we have close to a fair divide of people who have no knowledge and people who have basic knowledge, because basic knowledge at least is very necessary at this point of time for the cloud, because everywhere. Mm, so I was just seeing if we had any questions in between. So you see, we have a total of 15 respondents, but only imagine 10 bother to answer this, right? So now we have a count of 16. So this is what is survey results I was talking about. But still, say with this 10 people, so I would say that these 10 people want to make a difference in their life, or 10 or 11 people. There are few people who are like, okay, I know this stuff. I don't want to bother with my polling result. Anyways, it won't make a difference. But see, the survey results actually make a difference. It's same like selecting your leaders, right? Many times you don't feel like going to a polling booth and doing a poll to select your leaders. But what happens is at the end, when you have somebody say wrongly selected, then it comes to that everything we have to bear. So similarly, I'm not pinpointing on people or say saying this, but yeah, it is like with this you would come to know the basic understanding of what kind of people are there in the class, so that many times with such kind of polls, you see what happens is, imagine that there would be the instructor comes with a pre-notion that, okay, I would talk about say complete technology, I would talk about Databricks, I would talk about data factory, I would talk about things say Spark programming, Python programming, PySpark programming. But then, because whatever it is during this 1 hour or 1.5 hour session, you need to get the maximum out of it, right? So I cannot go out and talk about terms which might not make any you would not be able to connect. See, even though I was talking about gaming industry, I still wanted to relate it with say uh, a retail industry or a supermarket, because with that you would be able to relate it better, because at the end why we are here, to gain some knowledge or insight, right? And it should be a effective session. So based on these things, what I can do or Antwork can do is, we can tune our say, we would have come with a with some notion that we'll talk about this, but then we can change it by catering to the audience. So you see that, okay, we still have a lot of people who have basic knowledge as well, and there are a good amount of people with development experience as well. So I hope the previous two slides were not very technical. Maybe once you get into the field or once you start learning, those things would be very simple for you. So I just try to be very basic on that. Okay, so we will stop share results, and we would, yeah, we do have more than 50% of people who have little basic understanding on the cloud environment. That's a good sign actually. So see, when we talked about the dilemma for the data engineer, which cloud, because at the end, see, why did the client or why did the person come to you for a solution, because they thought that you would be able to say at the end, every company is driven by numbers in terms of revenues what they make, right? Because until they make revenue, they will not pay to you. So what should be your goal? Your goal should be to showcase them the amount of cost you would save over the period of time if you go for a one product rather than another product. So say in the previous slides we had some basics of what cloud provider to choose. So and we divided the components. Imagine that this was the component we thought that we will have something to ingest the data, do some transformations, show it on a visualization layer, and do some machine learning. So just four components: ingest something to ingest the data, something to store the data, something to visualize the data, and something to do machine learning. Imagine that we are very novice, we know nothing. So at least these four components. There should be something to ingest the data, something to store the data, something to visualize the data, and something to do machine learning. So with these four components, you can come out with a say the total cost of ownership based on how much of data they will have, what would be the data growth, what would be the amount of people who would be onboarded on system. So such kind of questions you would, as and when you work, you would come up with some kind of questions. And so for the use case, imagine that Microsoft was almost like say 39 to 40% cheaper than the highest total cost of ownership which was for that project. So obviously Microsoft Azure cloud was a winner in this. And after this slide, see, I would also like to show what are the advantages of Azure for a data solution. So see, we have data centers around the world, like wherever you are, whichever part of the earth you have, Microsoft has one of its data centers over there so that you can store data locally. What could be the reason for storing data locally is there could be a GDPR compliance. So imagine that storing customers' data in India is very different than storing customers' data for in Europe. So imagine we hear a lot of cases where we would say users' data has been stolen from Zomato site, data has been stolen from Swiggy site, and we just get away with it. We actually, because there's no law for it. But imagine the same kind of data breach happens in a European country. Your organization has to pay hefty amount for that data breach, because it is like, how dare you pass the customer information to the outside world? Why didn't you make that so secure? So imagine that if somebody from Europe is storing the data in India, there is a way where you can in Indian data center, if some data breach happens, nobody is there to care, right? So with the data in the data centers, you can achieve that thing. There are other advantages as well, which we would not go into that. You would have a flexibility to choose a mix match of flexibility. I will take you in the next slide, wherein see here you have so many things for the same thing. So even the see for the data, choices of data, you have Azure SQL data warehouse, you also have Azure SQL and VM. So this is the flexibility it gives. See, for big data processing, you have Azure Data Lake Analytics, you have SD Insight, you also have Databricks. So you get a right mix of, say, when you go to a store, you have a Pepsodent, you have a Colgate, you have a Ved Shakti or some, say, Patanjali or something is there, which is Ayurvedic toothpaste. You have a choice whether you want to purchase an Ayurvedic toothpaste, or you want a close up with a dangling sparkle thing and all. So these kind of choices you have. So as a customer, Microsoft is providing you such choices. That's what I mean by flexibility of choice. Security, see, there's no talk about security, because even you would have heard that Pentagon is there is no other secure organization than Pentagon in the whole world, which is like the military operations of US. Those guys as well are trusting Azure for their data needs. So that itself speaks about the security features which Azure can offer. Scalability, a very common example in cloud, wherein you just scale up and down. So what is scaling? Scaling is when required, you can go up to 100 terabytes of data. But if you don't want, you just want 80 terabyte of data, you scale down just with a scroll, it will happen. But imagine when you are purchasing a laptop, you do a one-time decision. Same like renting versus purchasing a house. So today, when a fresher joins the industry, he says that I would be spending 10,000 rupees for my uh, 10,000 rupees for my stay. What he does is he goes to a PG and he takes a paying guest accommodation with two people sharing, because he has a budget constraint that within 10,000 and within this range I'm getting two sharing or three sharing, I will take it. But imagine after 3 or 4 years when his salary increases, he says that no, I am earning enough now. What I do is I want a single house or a single room for myself, no intervention. That time, if a person would have purchased a single BHK house, if his family grows, say he has two kids, it would be difficult for him to accommodate within the same house, and he does not have a privilege of say expanding his house. But with cloud, that's an advantage. So imagine that if you are staying in a rented apartment, when you are just a single person, you can stay in a 1 BHK. But imagine you are married, then you have that choice that you say that, okay, now I'll go shift to a 2 BHK. So that's called scalability. You have that choices. But again, imagine that, say, if I would say that if your family members reduces due to whatever reasons, then what you can do is you can say that, okay, what's the point of me staying in a 2 BHK? I can almost degrade to a 1 BHK and save money on that. So that scalability it offers with cloud. But with on-premise, that's not an option, because once you purchase a laptop of 10 GB RAM, if you want to upgrade to because your needs increased, you started playing heavy games on that, wherein you would need at least 20 GB. The only option is you sell this laptop or gift it to somebody, take a new laptop. But with that's the scalability which cloud offers. Hyper capability, hybrid capabilities, like nowadays people talk a lot about multi-cloud. So if I have best of say in storage, AWS is good. Okay, I will use for my storage, I will use AWS. My ingestion is good in Azure. What I do is I would use Azure for my ingestion and things like that. So that hybrid capability, mix and max of mix and I would say working together with different cloud providers, that's called the hybrid capability, which Azure already has it. So these are the advantages which Azure offers. And now coming to the complete data landscape of Azure, see, these are the features which Azure offers to you for your data engineering landscape. So these, I talked about streaming data and real-time data, right? Which is like uh, the moment data is generated, you need to capture. So imagine that you have at least three choices for you. You can ingest the streaming data or real-time data using Azure IoT Hub, Azure Event Hubs, or Kafka. Depends on your use cases. It is not so. All these three caters to different kind of use cases within the real-time scenario itself. But that you need to decide based on your use case. Similarly, see, you can, for I was talking about the other factor, which is data ingestion. You need to ingest the data. There's something called the Azure Data Factory. There's something called Azure Import and Export Services. Depending on which kind of data is present on the left side of your architecture, you can use either Data Factory or Azure Import Services. You can also write raw code in your C# or Python to ingest data. Depends. You can use command line interface for ingesting the data. It's all up to you. These thing is the core of Azure, like Visual Studio operational. Will not get into that. See, within the SQL server itself, or say within the storage itself, it offers at least two kinds of storage: Azure Data Lake and blob storage, which is like a general purpose storage for, because say a storage for your video or audio might be very different from your storage on the files, correct? Because audio and video files are different than say text file, CSV file, JSON file. So we have plenty of options over here. Say for a video or audio, you can use Azure Blob. For your text files, you can use Azure Data Lake. That can be one of the things. So you see, for machine learning, a very common or I would say generating a lot of buzzword, everybody wants to learn machine learning. So imagine what all options it gives. It gives you option to do machine learning on Azure Databricks. It gives you option to do drag and drop on Azure machine learning. It also gives you option to for people, research people who usually do coding in R. See, R and Python are Julia as well. People are using for machine learning, but say R and Python are very prominent. R, most of the research people use. So you have an R server for that, which they can use it for doing the machine learning. So lot of things within the landscape you need to choose based on the particular use case. So just one last example, within the Azure database landscape itself, you see so many choices it gives. See, and here I'm not talking about Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB is a non-relational database, leave aside. But imagine within the relational database scape, what do we have? We have Azure SQL DB, you have an Azure SQL managed instance, you have an Azure SQL elastic pool. So see, for the same toothpaste, you have a Pepsodent, a Colgate, or a Sibaka Weight Shakti, or some Ayurvedic toothpaste. You need to choose what you want. And also it depends on the use case. So that way. So we have a lot of Azure data services within our landscape now. Yeah. So uh, see, this is a architecture what we used to follow during the complete or I would say this was the architecture we followed for providing a data solution to the client, wherein you see we capture data from relation. I would just show a small demo, or I would take you through the Azure portal as well, how did we do that. But prior to that, let's concentrate on, see, we have relational databases, we have web APIs over there, we have some file systems as well. So we collected data from all the from all the data providers, loaded it via ingestion pattern into the data lake. So what was the data lake? See, this is Azure data lake over here, because most of the data was in terms of files. So we thought, rather than going for a Azure blob, let's go for a Azure data lake, because it was a file system based approach. Within the data lake, we had, say, 3 regions, which is a very common pattern for data lake scenario. You have the raw data, wherein just ingest the data. Don't worry about what kind of data it is. Relating it to the previous word which I said, I am collecting data for, say, light ambience, for AC ambience, and food ambience as well. But there is no use case for a food ambience, because no business analyst or a department wants to invest onto a use case of food case. They are just interested in selling liquor and the ambience of their atmosphere in terms of light and AC. What is an ambient temperature? What is an ambient lighting? That use case we have. So in the raw data, I will have, say, survey results for my light, AC, as well as food. But people would just need light and AC. So we would provide from the trusted and the service data, we would just provide the light and the AC settings. We would not be providing the food. But imagine if something interesting comes up after 5 months or 6 months, where one department says, I want to invest and see how much what is the food habit of the people, then you need not start ingesting from here, from the left hand side. You already have the data over here. You just need to scale up this, wherein you can just start scaling up the food habit survey, kind of that. And then you can share the data across organization. There is also a way wherein you can share data uh, uh, I would say outside the organization as well. So you can monetize on the data which you capture. In the scenario of, say, COVID itself, lot of people have captured spending habits of people during COVID, and they are now monetizing on the data. Like, they are saying to people, boss, you give me this much amount, I will share how people have, say, purchased during the pandemic season. So it becomes important, right? Sometimes there is a famous saying by this guy, the founder of Ford, Henry Ford. He says that there would be a time where your organization would be lesser worth than the data which you have. So imagine the powerful statement he had made so long time back, that there would be a time where say if Ford Motors is $100 entity now, the data which Ford Motors would have would be say $500 or $300 entity. So such a powerful statement made by such pioneers during the initial stages. So with this, I would stop my presentation, and I would quickly share how does the Azure platform look and what does it have in store for you. Okay, so imagine that you can just log into your and everything, you can even do the same things on your laptop, on your tab. It's not that you need to have a heavy machinery or a heavy laptop or a heavy machine for your computations, because everything is working on the cloud. Okay, so you just log into portal.azure.com with the email IDs provided, or say credentials provided. Then what happens is, see, you can click on create a resource, and this is the complete plethora of things you have within Azure. So just imagine that I would go to see what does Azure offer within. So many things are there. You would be able to relate it to this slide over here. Yeah, the Azure data landscape. You see how everything, and here nothing is difficult. You just need to say you want to do a say, okay, let me take you to a machine, because I would just show you that Databricks thing, right? So what we'll do, we'll go here and we'll search for create a resource. So imagine that, see, I want to click on Azure Databricks. Okay, so you see you got a create, and everything is on a click of a button. I would not go ahead and click. Similarly, you can create a storage account and things like that. So imagine that I would take you to one of the ingestion frameworks which we developed for them. I had been talking about a lot about say uh, survey results, right? So survey results, it's nothing but a web API. So imagine that how did we do that? So what we can come over here. Before that, no, this is going to be yeah. I will show you the storage location, so that once I start, prior to that, let me start my uh, Databricks instance as well. I'm sorry, but I just need to, yeah. You would learn these things during the course of time, so nothing to worry if in case people are interested for enrolling. So this is just a Databricks cluster I need to start by the time I show you, because see this. So what does this provide you? It provides you unlimited capability to say run your uh, say machine learning or transformation logic. Okay, prior to that, let's go to the data lake which we have built. Okay, Qualtrics. Yeah. So see, this is a file system which we were talking about. Okay. So we did a raw layer, right? You can consider a raw layer as a bronze layer. If we talked about raw data, trusted data, service data. Okay, so bronze layer is like bronze, silver. Rather, it's a different naming convention, whether you say raw, trusted, or you say bronze, silver, and gold. So here, imagine that we have a bronze layer. Inside this, we have say the survey results. Okay, and you see these files will be populated based on. See, this is one of the survey results which is there. Now, once you have this survey, what you can do is you can start your analysis on this survey, right? So this is how data is stored within Azure. This is the data factory which we talked about over here. So what is a data factory? It is something to ingest data. What do we say? See, orchestrate the pulling of the data. So here, see, we this is one of the data factories where we are pulling data from say SQL server. Okay, and see, we look for I would not go into these details, we would study later, but imagine that, see, for each and every table within that SQL server, what we are trying to do is we are trying to pull out the data and store it. This is what happens over here. So we pull out the data, we store over this one. ST account, pause. content, studio content. Yeah, you see, within this as well, we have a bronze layer. Yeah. So you see, these are all my internal, this a folder structure will not see game. So imagine how many, see, these are all the data from the SQL server, which we can ingest via this. See, this small utility is populating so many files within it, and you can trigger it in the night, in the evening. So there would be close to 300 some tables which are being ingested every day. And the best time part is we can make it, see, you can make it timestamp, so that you know that on 29/7 what was the amount, how much, what was the data with me on 13/7. So similarly every week it runs, and your things will keep on growing. And so now that we have started this, let's do one thing. Let's go to, say, this ingestion, Qualtrics web API ingestion. We would go and nothing. See, I can even add a trigger. So when do we add a trigger? Trigger is like, you want it to run at say 12 p.m. in the night. You would not be there to run it physically. So these are, as and when we progress, we keep on adding these things. So for the time being, what we can do is we can just trigger the pipeline, and it will on the, and I will keep on talking to you, and we will see the data later. So time for let it run, it will take some time. See, it is running.
Anurag,
Yeah,
actually, we have another session at 11:30, so
yeah,
we may
sure.
have to,
Yeah,
we have to
so
close the
any
session soon.
questions on that? Hmm. Or we, I think it was a hopefully it was a good session where we got some understanding. Feel free guys to drop in your questions to Antwork. uh, Ram, would you like to take the students through the experimentation program which you have meanwhile?
Yes, it's probably I'll just take 2 minutes.
No problem.
Guys, actually, we have launched a course on data engineering, right? Which is in consultation with experts like Anurag, right? Who has given their own inputs about, what is in demand in industry. And based on their inputs, we have launched a 16-week experiential program on data engineering. And right, and usually our classes are organized in such a way that you have the classes on weekends. On Saturday we have one class, usually we have a class on Sunday, and on the Sunday morning we have classes like industry interaction and professional skills. Right, and throughout the weeks we do a lot of projects. We after every week we give you a lot of projects, so that whatever you are learning in your class, you are able to practice them also. Right, so we have also tied up with Azure. Right, so this program is basically going to be put up on Azure, and by the end of this program we'll be ready for this Azure certification also. Right, so everybody will be given an Azure account, to practice and do their labs. Right. So the idea is that the whole program is divided into multiple parts, and every part is being taken by an expert who has expertise in that area. So Anurag, can you go to the next link?
Yes.
Right. So if you see, right, this is how we have defined the whole journey, right, where you start from very, very basic skills that is required to be a data engineer. Right, let's say you require some Python, you require the knowledge of SQL shell, right, as well as data modeling. So this is the first part of the program, where you will be developing the basic skills which are required for working in the core data engineering, right? And then we start working with the data engineering part, where you learn about the big data and Hadoop. You will learn about data lake and data warehouse and Azure, which exit is taken by the Anurag himself. Anurag will also be taking a course on this data processing and batch processing. Then we'll move on to real-time stream processing, which is again be taken by Preetham, who is also a very acclaimed professional in his field. And along with these things, we also have a lot of other small courses in between, let's say data governance and all the other things that you as a data engineers are supposed to do when you reach the organization. The idea, guys, is that once you complete this course, you should be able to hit the ground running in case you join an organization. And at NPOC, we are also providing the full placement support, where we are already tying up with the company, so that by the time this program ends, we are able to line up interviews for you. Right. So this is the whole about our program. In case if you're interested, I have just shared a link on a chat box. You can just you can register there, and our educational counselor will give you a call back. Right. So that's it from our side, guys. Uh, hope to see some of you. I think some of our existing students are already in this class. Hope to see a few more people in our next batch, right? And that's it for the class. Thank Anurag. Thanks again for taking this class. It was very interesting, right? Kind of very hands-on. Thanks again, and guys, enjoy your weekends. Sorry, guys, I will not be able to take the questions because we are exactly running out of
Yeah,
time. We have another session
sorry.
lined up right now.
Sorry for
Uh,
taking it further than the designated time. Yeah.
no problem, Rag. Okay, bye, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, team. Have a good day.